Oh,
Oh,
okay,
it's
good.
already working. I must have hit it I hit okay whenever I don't know what to do. So that's
Okay, and now the
probably what I
technology
did.
part of this meeting is over.
Okay, so before we move on, is there anybody else who's here for their first or second meeting that hasn't had a chance to say hello, or is everybody else more seasoned?
Sue, have you been here before? You're muted. Sue Miller?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm having trouble changing the name. Usually there's a link at the top where you could easily put your name in. It's got my email address there. Yeah, I've been before to a number of meetings. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to this one. Yeah, I can't change the name right now.
Okay.
Well, we'll just call you Cactus. I hope you don't mind. And then there's somebody who's on an iPhone. I don't know who that is, but if you want to say hello or put on your camera or remain anonymous, whatever you want to do. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started? The first part of today's meeting, we're quite excited, and for many of you, it may be a return performance, but for some, first, we're going to be hearing from Lauren Greenberg from YouthAlive, which we have supported. I apologize in advance. I have roofers and a dog who's losing his mind, so I'm going to do my best, but no guarantees here. YouthAlive, which we've supported for a number of years in many different ways. And Lauren is going to give us an update today on what's happening in terms of what kinds of advocacy opportunities there are and legislation and ways we can help support them. And then Judith will make a little announcement about a particular way to support them at the end. So I want to just turn it over to you, Lauren, and maybe you could introduce yourself before you begin.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Can I just get a thumbs up? Everybody can hear me okay? All right, fantastic. So, and don't worry about the dogs barking in the background. That is the soundtrack to my life. So it's almost like I'm at home. Anyway, my name is Lauren Greenberg, and I am the Director of Development and Communications at YouthAlive, Oakland's anchor violence prevention, intervention, and healing agency. And in one of my capacities, I'm also a member of our policy and advocacy committee. So it's a group of YouthAlive staff, board members, and volunteers that get together and help inform what we believe the agency's policy priorities should be, where we learn about them, and we share them with our beloved community members, of which Ashby Village is absolutely one of those. And I know that we've had a really long and rich relationship with Ashby Village, with the Elder Action Committee. And so I just want to, again, on behalf of all of my colleagues, just really, really appreciate you all for all that you've continued to do, the hard work, the philanthropy, the gifts around the holidays, and just your engagement and helping to make sure that we have the most thriving, the safest, the best East Bay that we possibly can have. So now I need the host to go ahead and let me just share my screen. So can you make me a co-host? You can just go into the participant section, look at me, drop down the more tab, and then make me a co-host.
Julie, I'm assuming you're doing that, or do you need me to?
Well, I need you to because I accidentally made you the host and not the co-host.
Oh, I thought we switched that already. Okay, so go down. All right,
okay.
Lauren. So tell me again what I'm doing. I'm going into the participant list and
So you look at my name and you just hover over it, and then you see the little box that says more. Drop that down, and then you should be able to make me a co-host.
Okay. Yes.
All set?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. So I am now going to share my screen. Ba-ba-ba. Okay. So what I'm hoping you are seeing is this. Okay. So, we're we're going to be talking about YouthAlive's 2024 policy overviews. And just to be clear, what you are all seeing is actually just a full screen that says YouthAlive policy overview. You're not seeing the other tiles to the side, correct?
We are seeing the other
The
side.
side titles too.
Oh, okay. You're just give me just 1 second here. Sorry. See, it's fun for everybody getting to do this. Okay, boom. All right, how about now?
Yep.
All good. All right. Great. So this is my 7 millionth time using PowerPoint, and I'm so glad that we can be here together. Okay, moving on. So Youth Alive's 2024 policy overview. So first off, I want to start with how Youth Alive chooses bills to advocate for. And you see this beautiful graphic here. So right at the center of how we choose our priorities is the lived experiences of the youth, clients, and frontline staff that are part of the Youth Alive family. We choose bills to advocate for that we are strategically positioned to hear and understand the impacts on the community members and youth living in Oakland's most violent neighborhoods, relationships with public safety officials and policymakers, and our expertise on violence prevention. So Youth Alive, we recognize that our expertise comes from preventing violence and serving victims of violent crime. When policies are heavily focused on these areas, we know that we are called to take action. We take it as our duty to be a voice for victims and survivors of violent crime, so we speak up when legislation and policies will directly impact them. We have invented several approaches to violence prevention and intervention, so when the state or the city of Oakland is proposing legislation that impacts organizations like ours who are working day in, day out to prevent violence, we know that we are called to action. What you see here are how is basically our hierarchy of how we pick our policy priorities. And we ask ourselves these different questions to decide, okay, how do we know that we're going to be able to prioritize these? So we typically see our top tier priorities as treating violence as a public health crisis and healing trauma survivors. However, our internal advocacy committee, of which I am a member of, has identified other policy areas we care about that impact violence and our community members who are most impacted by violence. This image here, which is on our website, illustrates some of the other areas where we weigh in on legislation. We may not be leaders in these other areas, but we work with organizations who are policy leaders and experts, and we support their priorities. It is still early in the legislative year, so we are still evaluating what bills we will be supporting in the state capitol for 2024. However, year after year, we think about our policy priorities along these categories. One of the bills we have supported, these are the bills that we have supported so far this year. At the local level, our focus is Measure Z, which we're going to share much more on. At the state level, we're going to be supporting Assembly Bill 2913, which is this one in blue here, which is a bill to create a pathway for the families of homicide victims to request renewed investigative resources on their loved one's case if it remains unsolved for longer than 1 year. And we will be updating our website to reflect these policies for the current year. So a bit about AB 2913. Unfortunately, the city of Oakland has a very low closed case or homicide solve rate. And one of the things that happens when a homicide isn't solved is that a family feels that justice hasn't been served. It makes it very difficult for them to move forward, to get healing, and also for the community to have a sense of confidence in the institutions that are purported to keep us safe, including law enforcement. And so this bill provides families an opportunity to say, hey, can I get a new investigator on this? Can I get a new detective? Let's open this case. Let's see if we can get to the bottom of it and make sure that we can actually achieve justice. It can have a very profound healing on families. And it also, one of the other things to keep in mind is if homicides aren't solved it can embolden those who might be perpetrators of violence to feel like they can act with impunity. If you want to learn about any more of these bills, you can go ahead and check out our website, youthalive.org/legislative advocacy, or if you go on the top bar, which you see the little arrow pointing to the Take Action bar, what you'll find is our priority issue areas, bills that we're supporting or opposing, social media actions that you can take, a historical record of legislative advocacy, and often there will be sample language to write to your representative or lawmaker. So now I'm really excited to spend some time diving into Measure Z, which, as we mentioned, is really going to be our priority for this year for the city of Oakland and for Youth Alive. And this measure is absolutely critical for Oakland's safety. So Measure Z for a safer Oakland. What is Measure Z? For the past 10 years, the Oakland Public Safety and Services Violence Prevention Act has levied a parcel tax that provides roughly $30 million a year. This act, the original Measure Z, is set to expire at the end of 2024. That's this year. Measure Z has historically invested in public safety through violence prevention, police, and fire services. With Measure Z set to expire, an important source of funding for Oakland public safety approaches is under threat unless voters reauthorize this measure. This has a direct impact on community-based organizations like Youth Alive. And for those of you who are, I know that not all of you live in Oakland, some of you live in Berkeley, some are in Alameda, some are in Albany. It's important to keep in mind that, as you know, though the Bay Area is a super region, our region is porous, meaning that things that happen in one city or in one town can impact what's going on in another area. So it's good for us to think about keeping all the regions of the Bay Area, especially the East Bay, safe and healthy. So I'm going to go on a little bit more about Measure Z. Here's what it does. It enhances programs for Oakland kids and crime victims, like the students that Youth Alive serves, like the clients that we serve, the over 2,000 individuals and their families that Youth Alive touches every year. It improves Oakland's 911 response times. This is critical. It increases police staffing to reduce violent crime. Sometimes you need to get the law enforcement involved. We want to make sure that they have the resources and the training necessary to actually keep us safe. It will invest in firefighter staffing to improve emergency response times. Often firefighters, as you know, show up every time there's a 911 call. We want to make sure that firefighters can be there when a 911 call comes through, and that they're also available when there is a potential fire disaster. It also creates a citywide community violence reduction plan. Excuse me. So in any kind of major policy, there needs to be a broad sweeping coordinated effort across various entities, which include the city government, law enforcement, Department of Violence Prevention, citizens, first responders, aides, the people that are answering the phones, everybody that you can think of that is involved in any kind of social policy carrying through that impacts the lives of everyday citizens. There needs to be a coordinated effort, and Measure Z creates funding to ensure that that is the case. It also empowers a citizen planning and oversight commission and an independent budget auditor to monitor and account for the proper and effective use of this fund. Oftentimes, when funding comes through for something, it takes a while for those funds to actually trickle into the communities and into the programs that need them most. Measure Z already accounts for that. The status of this measure is that language was recently finalized through a compromise between community-based organizations like Youth Alive, business leaders, and city officials. The measure, if passed, would last 9 years. That provides very critical funding that is ongoing that we can count on, so we can spend less time fundraising and more time responding to the needs of our community who desperately needs us. Here's why it matters for Youth Alive. It's an essential source of funding for community-based violence prevention, intervention, and healing work happening in Oakland. Most of you have excellent expertise and are very fluent in our programs. Measure Z funds Youth Alive's work significantly. These services, which are vital for Oakland victims and survivors of violent crime, rely on Measure Z dollars to operate. Without Measure Z, the city would face a much greater difficulty in fully funding community-based strategies, especially in times of greater difficulty with the city budget, like what we're in right now. In short, without Measure Z, a lot of the programs like YouthAlive are greatly diminished, and we're not able to actually even respond to the unprecedented need that our community has had since the very beginning of 2020. The status of this bill is that signatures are being collected, and the measure, in order to put the measure on the November ballot, there may have a different name once it's assigned to the ballot, and more information will be shared once the campaign kicks off later this month. So here's how you can all help. And I know that this is you're all women and people of action. So how you can help. Get the word out, highlight your support for Measure Z to Oakland City Council and to Mayor Tao. Educate your Oakland neighbors about the need for this measure. Write letters of support that can be widely shared and encourage others to sign the petitions to support violence prevention funding. Now, about AB 2913, Families of Homicide Victim Rights Act. I had mentioned this a little bit earlier, but once again, it creates a pathway for the families of homicide victims to request renewed investigative resources on their loved one's case if it is unsolved for more than 1 year. Incidents after 1990 are eligible. Here's where we're at with the bill status. It's passed out of the Assembly Public Safety Committee on April 2nd. Our very own Teens on Target violence prevention educator, Janisha Grisham, actually testified in the state capitol in support of this bill, which was tremendous. And for those of you who are going to be attending YouthAlive's annual fundraiser, 510 Day, it's our breakfast fundraiser, really the event of the year. Janisha is actually going to be our keynote speaker to share about her own story. So she really is a very critical community organizer and a rising public figure. Now the bill heads to the Appropriation Committee, which is chaired by Assemblymember Buffy Wicks, who represents Berkeley. She has been a longtime supporter of YouthAlive, is very, very, very invested in community-based solutions to gun violence prevention. And we really are lucky to have her be the chair of this particular piece of legislation. So, how you can help, highlight the bill for Assemblymember Wicks. Call her office to share your support. Saying things like, thank you so much for chairing this. I really think that this is important. We really want to see Measure Z. You can draft a letter of support to send to Assemblymember Wicks. There's her email below, and I'll make sure to share out these slides and everything so that you can get this this important contact info. So now we are at the point of questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see who's asking. Hopefully I didn't speak too fast, but yeah, I'm going to take questions now.
So before we get to the general questions, Lauren, I think there may be a few people on this call who aren't familiar with YouthAlive. And we wondered if you could give a little bit of an overview of what YouthAlive does, you know, the kind of big picture, so that it'll make sense in terms of the kinds of policies and legislation that you work toward. Oops, you're on mute.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that. And then I was also thinking that it might be nice if I shared a brief video about our work as well.
Sure.
But yeah, so in short, YouthAlive is Oakland's anchor violence prevention, intervention, and healing agency. So what does that mean? It means that we prevent violence before it starts. We are at 3 high schools in East Oakland, and we do a peer-led violence prevention curriculum, which helps students learn to advocate for themselves, learn to prevent violence, learn critical conflict mediation skills, and then these students who actually get paid to teach the curriculum that they've developed, they go and they provide this violence prevention curriculum to hundreds of middle school students in Oakland every single year. We have intervention programs as well. So we've got a street-based team of men and women who are credible messengers who go who have, I'm sorry, who go out where before violence erupts to calm tensions, to mediate conflicts between individuals and groups, and to discourage retaliation. We also have a hospital-based program called Caught in the Crossfire, which is the nation's first hospital-based violence intervention program. So when somebody gets violently wounded, our intervention specialists get a page from the hospital. So we have contracts with all of Alameda County's trauma centers, which is Highland Hospital in Oakland, Children's Hospital Oakland, and Eden Hospital in San Leandro. And we actually show up to the hospital bedsides to discourage retaliation, to help make sure that that individual has opportunities for healing, whether it's making sure that they have a right to physical therapy, understanding if they might need to be relocated because they're under threat of retaliation, or just making sure that they know that they have somebody that has had an experience like they've had, that's gonna walk with them hand in hand to help them heal. A really important statistic to keep in mind is, of the individuals that receive services through Caught in the Crossfire, they experience a re-injury rate in the first 5 years of about 2 to 4%, which is very low. The national average for gunshot wound survivors who do not receive services is about 44%. So our re-injury rate is far
Mm.
lower. Then we have a program called Pathways that is set up for youth who are at promise, but have maybe had some experiences with the juvenile justice system, or are at risk for academic failure. And we have it's our intensive case management and mentorship program, where we have trained professionals that meet with young people, develop a roadmap for success, help them complete probation, help them graduate school, help them get job placements, pretty much anything that that young person might need to uh, gain a sense of equilibrium and prevent them from recidivating, which is a word that means like getting like reoffending. And then we have our healing programs because um, try as we might, YouthAlive can't be there every time that somebody decides to pick up a gun. And that's where our healing programs come into play. We have a program called the Gaddafi Washington Project, named after the murdered son of its founder, who, in the immediate aftermath of a killing, our crisis responders will respond to nearly 100% of families of Oakland homicide victims to offer practical, financial, and emotional support, whether that's going to identify a body at the coroner, planning a funeral, making sure that the family has nice clothes, or are getting a fair price at a funeral home so that they can bury their loved ones with dignity, as well as Youth Alive fills in the financial gap often if a state denies a victim of crime compensation appeal for individuals that are trying to bury their loved ones. The average cost of a funeral in California is about $15,000, and often families cannot. Uh, it's when a homicide happens, the death is unexpected, and often families are in dire straits, and so we make sure that they have what they need to bury their loved ones. And then we also have counseling and mental health services, which are strength based, trauma informed, healing centered, and we meet people where they're at. So sometimes the typical 55-minute counseling, or sorry, 50-minute therapy hour doesn't work for our community. Often, the community that we serve has negative experiences with therapy, or asking for help, or seeing it as often like another example of how the system has hurt them. So that's why we meet folks where they're at, figuratively and literally. It could be in a park, it could be at a client's home, maybe it's over coffee. And the goal is to provide healing and counseling services for as long as it takes. And I really want to highlight an important piece of this, which is our bilingual counseling services are all provided free of charge. And they are available to any one of Youth Alive's clients. And then finally, we've got our advocacy policy and advocacy arm, which is what I'm here representing today, even though I'm YouthAlive's fundraiser. And what we're really interested in prioritizing is making sure that funding for violence prevention is funded, is approached and enshrined in our laws as the public health issue that it is, and that a sense of caring and trauma-informed approaches are also part of the systems that are enshrined in our laws at the local, state, and federal level. And so very quickly, and definitely much more eloquently than I just attempted, I'm going to just show you a very brief video about our work.
Foster community prevention, intervention, healing.
Right here.
Oakland is a complex mix, rich heritage, and deep-seated community values. Despite its challenges, the spirit of our community shines through our work at YouthAlive. Through our efforts, we established the country's first hospital-based violence intervention program and successfully advocated for groundbreaking investments in community violence.
Sound is not on.
Oh, I'm sorry about, you cannot hear the
Close that.
volume. Oh, that is a problem. Let's solve that now. I am so sorry about that. Wow, I'm really just having an excellent time with this today. All right, let's do this over. Thanks for letting me know that. How about
I'm
now?
Dr. Joseph Griffin, Executive
Yeah.
Director of YouthAlive in Oakland, California.
Good.
For over 30 years, we've worked relentlessly to disrupt cycles of violence and foster community leaders through prevention, intervention, healing, and advocacy. Oakland is a complex mix of rich heritage and deep-seated community violence. Despite its challenges, the resilience and enduring spirit of our community shines through our work at YouthAlive. Through our efforts, we established the country's first hospital-based violence intervention program and successfully advocated for groundbreaking investments in community violence intervention. In the last year, our intervention specialists who go to the hospital bedside of gunshot victims supported over 300 clients. Our hospital program's rate of re-injury is 3%, far lower than the national rate of re-injury, which is 44%. Our violence interrupters mediated over 250 conflicts in neighborhoods and schools, and our crisis responders supported over 120 families in the immediate aftermath of losing a loved one to gun violence. We work with communities, not on communities, crafting resonant solutions to community violence. We invite you to join our continuing mission toward a safer, stronger Oakland.
It's time for me to get set up for therapy, and I use this room.
Okay, let me just stop sharing my screen here. Okay.
Well, thank you, Lauren. That was really very, very interesting and informative. And now I know you've opened it for questions. I don't know if anyone else is having a little difficulty remembering what legislation you talked about in order to be able to ask questions, but Julie's got her hand up, so we have a few minutes to regain our memory on those. Go ahead,
Okay,
Julie.
Lauren, I have a couple of questions. You mentioned that Measure Z is now in the signature gathering stage. So my question was, how many signatures does it need, and where are the signatures being gathered?
I actually do not know how many signatures we still need, but I can find that out from Gabriel. And the signatures are being gathered through the committee that is formed in support of Measure Z.
And they're just going around the community at supermarkets and things like that collecting the signatures?
I believe so, as well as reaching out to like business leaders and things like that.
Okay. The other question I had was, I remember last year, I think it was last year, an incredibly dramatic victory that you had. Gabriel went to Sacramento with some other violence prevention folks and got a remarkable increase in violence prevention funds for community-based programs.
Mhm.
Did I make that up, or is that true?
No, that is true, and we are waiting for those funds to begin trickling down into community-based organizations. But we've gotten some of the congressional earmark already.
So that money, after all this time, it still hasn't been made available?
A portion of it has been. There is, with anything like this, there's like a level of litigation. But yes, we have begun receiving some of that money.
Okay. Thank you.
Roberta? You're on mute, Roberta.
Always forget that. Yeah. So, yeah, one of the things I have always loved about YouthAlive is I feel like when I make a donation to them, it actually goes directly, not to some big, vast bureaucracy, but to actual services. And that is so nice to see. But I'm wondering, in something like Measure Z, where some of the money goes to the city and some clearly directly to you guys, how effective is the city in using the money? Like, 911 response times, I know has been a big issue in our city. And even the violence reduction programs over and beyond what you have. I mean, do you feel the city is using the money from Measure Z well, or is there ways in which we need to advocate more to the city directly?
I can only speak to the way that YouthAlive uses our money, and I think that you know that we're a very lean operation. I know, Roberta, you've been a longtime supporter of our work, and I think if you've ever seen our offices, you know that we're quite a lean operation. And so, in terms of could the city be more efficient? It's hard to say. I think that something to keep in mind is that there isn't only one solution to preventing violence. I think YouthAlive has an approach. Department of Violence Prevention has an approach. The law enforcement officers have what they believe is the right approach, and then we've got fire. And so I think that I think that more importantly, we need there to be a coordinated effort, and that's why whenever this funding comes out, there's a bunch of line items that various stakeholders that negotiate for. And so, would it be cool if YouthAlive got like all of the money from Measure Z? Like, of course, but I think that the best way that I can answer that totally fair question is, I think that with legislation that guarantees funding for almost a decade, it helps alleviate some of the stress and competition that I feel like various agencies might find themselves embroiled in. And we're able to more focus on what are effective ways for us to address our shared goal of preventing violence instead of jockeying for limited resources.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Looks like Anne, you have a question?
Yeah, you may have already mentioned this, but coming in relatively new to this, where is your major funding coming from? Is it private donations or taxpayer money? And how are you supported?
And that's such a great question. I actually didn't cover this. So the bulk of our funding is through various government grants and contracts. So that's city, state, and some federal. But then another big amount is in foundations, so private family foundations. We get a little bit of money from corporations like Clorox, like Square, like Google. And then a lot of that is made up by individual donors, like so many of you at Ashby Village. And something that I'll mention is that a lot of the money that we get from government grants and contracts is like every single dollar needs to be accounted for, every receipt. There's a lot of compliance, which takes a lot of staff time, of which that's like 60 to 70% of the grant often, or the contract that you'll be getting is actually administering it, as opposed to like actually going and providing the services or giving the resources to the community. When you have unrestricted funds, it allows us to be nimble and respond in crisis to like a mother that needs to be relocated because her son was just shot, and we need to make sure that she's got like diapers and like a week's worth of like safety in like a hotel, and needing to like go and account for that too. This is one example. Needing to account for that can be that's difficult when a lot of the work that you're doing is in crisis and we need to act quickly. But I am happy to say this isn't probably a longer answer than you were looking for, Anne. But I think that something that is really special about Youth Alive is that we have varied income streams, which allows us to maintain our services uninterrupted when funding, like government funding, might ebb and flow based on the political tides or like the will of leadership.
Let's see, Lynn, want to ask a question?
Yes, could you tell me what your budget is?
Yes, our budget is currently $7.2 million.
I used to be in the development department at Girls Inc. So
I love Girls Inc. So you know.
We loved you too.
Right on.
So I have a question, Lauren, and I think this is going to reflect my having forgotten a little bit the early part of your presentation, but it sounded like you talked about 2 or 3 bills and that maybe 2 of them were Oakland specific. And I don't live in Oakland. And I'm wondering, in terms of the advocacy for Oakland bills, whether the Oakland elected officials really care what somebody like me from Berkeley thinks, and just how one can frame it as not just a problem of Oakland, sort of generally, but then in these specific pieces of legislation, what role can people who don't live in Oakland play in advocating?
I love this question, and it's right on. I think you're right that the legislation that we were talking about is heavily Oakland centered by the nature of where we do our work. And I think that, first of all, an email, a phone call, a letter, that doesn't hurt. That never hurts. It's more energy. And it's letting folks understand that, like, I think that the way that I would frame it is that your neighbors and what happens in Oakland. Where do you live? Do you live in Berkeley? So Berkeley is right next door. What happens to your next door neighbor? It's not as though you don't feel it as well. If your neighbor's house is on fire, it's not as though the smoke doesn't impact you. And so I think mentioning that, like understanding that you feel connected to Oakland as your city next door, and that you really care about young people, and that though this region is massive, our borders are porous. Okay. Just because you get over on like 62nd on MLK and suddenly you're in like a new city doesn't mean that like suddenly the world is completely different. And I think that I would just frame it as like you're a concerned neighbor that cares about what happens to young people, especially something to consider is that like Oakland is the most populous city in the Bay Area. It's very diverse, and it has historically been underinvested in, and you're just wanting to highlight that this is something that you also care about. I could imagine that as an elected official, even though they don't necessarily have to be accountable to you in the same way that they would be to somebody that puts them in office, I think it's powerful to hear that, oh, our neighbors in Berkeley actually care what the heck is going on to these these people in Oakland. I think that really matters.
Thank you. Let's see, Anne.
Yeah, I'm interested in what's happening in terms of the proliferation of guns and people owning guns. And does your organization have any success in reducing the numbers of firearms, or the fact that in some cultures it may be in to carry one, a macho thing or whatever? And how are you able to address this, if at all?
Thanks for that question. So we share space with a number of our partners in the gun violence prevention space that really like it's better understood as gun control. So we're like a partner for Giffords, for example, and Brady and Everytown and Moms Demand Action, who are really focused on legislation around preventing firearms and the proliferation. That is not exactly what we do, but what we can do is talk with individuals that are carrying firearms and work to convince them not to carry them, to help the students that we serve not to carry a gun, to change. In fact, the students that go in our programs, we do these surveys before they begin the program and after the program, and over 90% when they completed the program changed their mindset around thinking that carrying a gun actually made them safer. Knowing to talk a friend out of using a gun when somebody disrespects them. And so part of it you could think of as like a culture thing, but there's also the reality that like the community that we serve is in a survival state where if everybody has a gun, then everybody has a gun. And what we really work on is trying to alleviate the environmental factors that would make somebody vulnerable to violence. So making sure that somebody has healing when they're hurt, making sure that people have mental health counseling, helping people find jobs, stable housing, those types of things that would hopefully make a person less likely to pick up a gun. Unfortunately, in the United States, we're in a situation where there are more guns than there are people. And until we actually do something fundamental about our culture's obsession with them, uh, it's it's it is an uphill battle. But YouthAlive is really kind of focused on the environmental factors around community violence. And I recognize that might not be a satisfying answer, but that's the role that we play in this pretty complex public health issue. I appreciate the question.
Thank you. Julie?
I just wanted to say a couple of things before we run out of time. Judith Coates is not here, but she did send us a message, so I'm going to channel her now. She's in Tunisia, actually, visiting her daughter. She says she needs 3 more people to fill the Ashby Village table at the May 10th breakfast that Lauren talked about, at which the young person who was in Sacramento advocating and testifying will be the keynote speaker. The breakfast is from 9 to 10 on May 10th, and you can email. I'm going to put Judith's email in the chat box again. It's also in the agenda that we sent out this morning. So I know that some of you who are on this call have been to that breakfast. It's very compelling, and so that's one way we can support YouthAlive immediately. The second thing is we have, as Lauren said, over the years supported them in a number of ways, and at the holiday time, this most recent holiday in December, we about 12 Ashby Village folks and their friends collected an extraordinary amount of money to help a grandmother whose daughter had been killed and left the grandmother with 3 or 4, I can't remember, children under 5. And we fulfilled their entire wish list plus some more. And so that's certainly one way you can help at that point. And then also on the agenda for today's meeting, and we will send this out with the notes too, is a link to the donate section of YouthAlive's website. If you can't go to the breakfast, but you would like to support them with funding. So I think so I'm going to put Judith's email in the chat box. Thanks.
Thanks. I'll do a little plug for that breakfast. Because it is a fairly depressing time in the world for me, and I need things that give me a sense of hope, that breakfast will make you feel hopeful. So it's money well spent to go and hear young people talk about having turned their lives around. And it's really amazing. And it's a time in the world when I think we all need to have that feeling of hopefulness. So Fill those last 3 spots. Come on, team, do it.
I appreciate that. I will also mention that the breakfast is completely free to attend, and though it is a fundraiser, any amount, $10, $50, 5 million, whatever you've got, even if it's just your time and your company, that is also valuable as well. I think that something that we're always blown away by is that about 200 people show up to hear about our work and then leave feeling like, all right, we're moving the needle a little bit. So I don't want you to feel like, oh, I'm on a fixed income or anything like that, and this isn't a place for me. It is a place for you if what you really care about is helping young people be safe.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming, Lauren, and really appreciated your slides. And we'll look forward to being able to share them with everybody who was here, so you didn't have to take a bazillion notes. And I think there was nobody else who had any questions, in which case we'll move along on the agenda. And thank you again so very much.
Thank you. And thank you for being so gracious with my technical difficulties. Anyway, I look forward to seeing many of you on May 10th. Okay, bye-bye.
Great. Bye. So next we are going to hear from Judy, and then maybe myself. Judy's going to talk about the climate action plastics piece.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
How did Ashby Village happen to get involved with YouthAlive?
I could probably tell you a little bit. I know Judith Coates is the one that first hooked us up with YouthAlive because she was quite concerned about gun violence. There was one point when we started Elder Action, we all kind of picked an area that we were concerned about and then researched it, looked into what could be done, and she found YouthAlive and invited us to the first breakfast that a number of us have gone to, and we continue to go each year. So that was, I think she was just concerned about the whole, like we all are, about gun violence, and found a positive way to try to help. So I don't know if anybody else has more information about that.
Go ahead, Roberta.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that another thing that you can do, and it's the way I found out about YouthAlive many moons ago, was my neighbor actually had a little gathering and invited somebody from YouthAlive to come and talk to my neighbors. And so they got involved and started giving donations. And so, you know, that's one thing that you can do besides donating money, is actually gather a group and then ask YouthAlive to send a speaker, and they're very happy to do that.
Actually, they will do it even on Zoom. They call it a tour of YouthAlive, and they usually have young people involved in it too. It's incredibly compelling, and yeah. So we'll put Lauren's email in the notes from this meeting so that you can contact her if you're interested in arranging that kind of tour meeting.
And if we want to be one of the 3 people to go to the breakfast, who do we contact?
Well, Judith Coates, and I did chat her email, and it's also in the agenda.
Okay.
Today's meeting, and I will send it out again in the notes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Okay, Judy, back to you.
Okay, back to me, back to previous things that we've been working on, which was one of my interests, was trying to fight the whole problem with plastic pollution, and how do we recycle, and how do we solve the mess we're in with all the plastics in our environment. So we've put on 2 different presentations with speakers over the past months, and last month we spent some time just talking together about what solutions we can come up with, and what are some answers to the whole plastic issue. And so today we thought we would just ask those of us who are trying to learn as much as we can, and maybe make some changes or find some alternatives in our own homes, to share any ideas that we've discovered over the past month. So anybody who has discovered something or want to share something about changes they're making in their own lives, or I also will update you a little bit on some legislation that's coming up regarding plastics. So anybody have something that they, okay, Lynn?
Okay, so I took on the job of going to Trader Joe's to ask them. And I wrote to customer relations. Oh, there it is. And here's their answer. Thank you for your inquiry. The plastic film and plastic bags our stores collect get sent back to their respective warehouses to be recycled. Each warehouse has a different recycling partner that they work with, and we are not at liberty to disclose this information.
Wow. That was a little
that was not
not
helpful.
very helpful.
So I wondered if anybody has a stronger way that's not okay. Why aren't they at liberty to disclose it? What's the secret? What are they not doing right?
Yeah. That's
Wow.
there's so many things like that that make us all very suspicious. I know the more and the more I research into the problems of plastic, the more cynical I get about, my God, nothing is really working.
Really?
And, it's all a big farce, especially a lot of the industry and how they say, well, this is being recycled and that's being made into picnic tables, and it's
It makes me
really
very
hard to trust.
Yeah. But then I went to the ecology center to ask them about the green bags. And they said, I don't know if you can see this, but it has to have this BPI compostable logo on the bag. And some bags have it and some bags do not. And then whatever you put in the bag also has to be compostable.
Yeah.
So you can't use these for your regular everyday garbage.
Because they're not compostable. Yeah.
Because not everything is compostable. And the other little thing I learned from them is, the little labels on your bananas and your avocados and on the cheese, that's all plastic. You have to take it off.
Or it ends up for me, I have a compost bin in my backyard, and when I sort the dirt into my garden, it's full of all those little round plastic labels.
Yeah, they're not composting. So
I would like to add one thing. We were in New Zealand where our son and his wife and our 2 grandchildren are. And one of the things they're just there for the year. One of the things we were really struck by is the kids in the school they go to, they bring their own lunch, but they can't bring in anything that they're not taking back to their house. In other words, they can't, which I thought was a very good message for kids.
Great.
Julie has her hand
Yeah,
up. I don't know
Julie?
if you saw that, Judy.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I have 2 things to say. So after the last meeting, somebody reported to me, someone who was at that meeting, and I don't think is here today, that she went to Berkeley Bowl and pointed out to them that their so-called compostable bags weren't compostable, and that they should put up a sign saying that. So I didn't hear whether she got a response from them or not, but that was an immediate action. So I have a positive thing to say here. Rayleigh's, I live in Richmond, and Rayleigh's is my supermarket. And I wrote them a year or so ago and told them that I wasn't going to buy lamb chops from them anymore because of the plastic packaging, and that I would wish that they would find another way. Well, I got a gift box from Rayleigh's the other day. I have no idea why, except that we are regular customers. And one of the things in it was this shampoo and conditioner. It was in a paper, container. And it says we're on a mission to rid the world of unnecessary plastic, but we want to look fabulous doing it. So is that wrong? And then the two things in here, this is a mini container, were about the size of this blue thing you see. One is a conditioner and one is shampoo. And I used it this morning. You rub it into your hair, you wash it out, and I'm not saying my hair looks fabulous, but it doesn't look any more or less fabulous than it does using those gigantic plastic containers that occasionally fall off the shelf and spill into the tub. So I'm planning, I still haven't done it yet, but I am planning to write to Rayleigh's and say, okay, you didn't do anything about the lamb chops, but thank you for sending this to me. And I don't know whether they are actually selling this in the store. That's to be checked on. But anyway, a victory of some sort. Somebody listen to you, Judy.
Good, great.
You
You
have
know, a
cranberry.
lot of these items that you're trying, like what Julie is using, you can find these items if you go to those refill or fill up kind of stores. There's 3 or 4 of them in Oakland, Berkeley area where they'll sell you shampoo in a little bar, or or you can refill your own containers and not have to keep buying plastic containers. So I know we've talked about that in a lot of our past meetings to try one of those services and see if you can use some of their products. Paula, welcome. I think you came in a little bit late, so welcome. We're glad you're here.
I know, I'm sorry. I have a lot going on, so I follow you usually through the the notes after the meetings. And I'm freeing, my time's freeing up a little bit, so I'm hoping to be able to get to the meetings more often. But I don't know if you have talked about Ridwell. Have you talked about Ridwell?
We have a little bit in the past, yes. So
Is a general sense that it's a good thing? I do it, and I never know for sure whether they really do what they say or not. But
I know there are different people here who do use it. I don't use it. My son does. I've tried to research it too, and I'm not really sure how much they actually are being able to recycle and reuse. But they're, I think they're at least making people aware of how much plastic they are using and have to dispose of somehow. And hopefully they are using some of it, but I don't know for sure.
Right. I was going to mention Feel Good is the one that's on Solano that you mentioned, the refill. Try to use those as much as possible. But I agree with all of you that, it seems like it's really hard. You have to buy meat, I forget, Julie said about meat. You have to buy it from the butcher counter. Otherwise you get all the crap that they put around it. And that's really frustrating. But it just means you have to wait a little longer. But I have spent so much time searching for things like even bakery, it's very hard to find bakery products that aren't in the clamshells and that, and I won't buy it, unless it's in a paper, but they don't seem to care. It's really frustrating. They want you to see what's in it. And so I think if we could maybe, I don't know if you talked about this, but maybe do a group action at some point and go to a store, and like I think of Lucky in El Cerrito, for example, and just say, look at all this and count up how many, and then make it, sort of visible. Even 2 or 3 people, doesn't have to be a huge group, but just to sort of make it, bring it to people's attention, because I keep the clamshells after and then try to, use them when I'm doing other things, but they pile up so much, but thanks for talking about this. And I'm sorry, I haven't been involved more, but I hope to be.
Well, great. Nice for your ideas. And
We did do a group action last year or the year before about moving your money. And that was a number of Ashby villagers showed up at the different locations or went with each other or something. And that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, the whole thing with a butcher. I'd go to a place where there is a butcher counter, but they wrap it in that butcher paper, which is plastic coated. And I wrote my store and I talked to the butcher every time I go in there. Why can't you use just plain butcher paper without having plastic on the butcher paper? At least I've got them so they won't wrap the meat also in a plastic bag.
Right.
Put it on a piece of this white tissue paper.
Exactly.
But it's the producer the promoters and the producers of these materials are just bigger than us and more effective in getting all these products out there.
It's just habit in the produce section. I never put my produce in those little green bags, even though they're probably recyclable, but still I try, and there's no need to put it because they're going to wash it when I get home anyway. And, but when I look at people, I say, do you really need that? You know, and I mean, I try not to be, you know, irritated, but, you know, it's just a kind, my biggest complaint is what you've already brought up, I think, and that is that the pressure has been put on the individuals, on us to take care of it, when it's really not our job. It should be done at the industry level. You know, I mean, they're the ones that are causing the problem, and one person here and there isn't going to be able to solve it. So yeah, I'm glad that Lynn wrote that letter, and we need to keep writing.
Keep working at it.
Yeah.
I know I try to get into the grocery store and out with as little plastic as possible. So I do take my own canvas bags, and I have mesh bags that I've made or have bought to use for produce bags. I don't take the plastic produce bags either, unless something is super messy or fine and it's going to fall through the you know, the plastic, or I mean the mesh. But I agree that there's some people that go out with so many plastic bags, and I can tell you that there is a bill. Well, there are two bills before the legislature right now. They're going through various committees. Both of these bills are trying to eliminate the loopholes that happened with the last banning of single-use plastic bags in our grocery stores. We passed a bill, you know, years ago that you couldn't use single-use plastic bags for your groceries when you take them from the grocery store. Well, the industry figured out a way to get through the little tiny fine print of the bill and started to produce these thicker, heavier duty plastic bags now that you're given at the grocery store. So now there are two bills. One's going through the House, one's going through the Senate. They're called mirror bills. They're both trying to get through, but they say the same thing, to try to eliminate the loopholes so that they cannot sell those thicker plastic bags. We're going to have to use recycled paper bags or bring your own in, you know, and not use those heavier plastic bags. But we'll see. They're going through different committees right now. And it's kind of like you said, it's early to try to address this legislation now, because you never know if it's even going to get through the next appropriations committee or whatever. So once if it gets through, gets to the point where it's going to go somewhere, then we could start writing letters of support. I'm part of a group called 350 Bay Area Action, and it is an advocacy group that follows these bills, and we do write letters of support, and we do work with different coalitions, but it's kind of hard for an individual to do unless you're kind of part of a group that's working on it right now. Anybody else with some hints, tricks, ways not to use plastic in their lives?
And Judy, one more thing, in today's agenda that went out this morning, there is a link to 350.
Yeah.
And it will take you to all the legislation they're tracking and give you a way to get involved with them if our occasional check-in at 350 isn't enough. So,
yeah, and that list is basically, I think, from looking at it, is just their fighting fossil fuels piece of their actions. There are other groups that are doing transportation and energy use. There are other groups that are doing different things. But like I said, it's kind of hard to get individually involved in these until you know it's really a bill that's going to go for a vote. And then it's time to maybe get an action plan together for it. I had a couple little ideas of things I've done. First of all, is get out of the store with as little plastic as possible. I haven't yet been able to get out without any plastic. I mean, I do love to buy cheese, and you know, I don't go to the cheese specialty store for my cheese, but try to buy things in glass instead of plastic. Milk bottles, cream, mayonnaise, olive oil. Buy the glass, because that's going to get recycled. Let's replace saran wrap with aluminum foil. You know, I always thought, oh God, aluminum foil, what a waste. But really, you can recycle it. It will get recycled. So I use a lot of aluminum foil now, and I have it, I rinse it off and put it back in my drawer. Then when it gets too shabby, you just ball it up into like a big baseball sized ball and put it in your recycling. Don't throw it in like a piece at a time. Try to ball it up so it's a big enough of an item it doesn't get clogged in their machines. But I'm using aluminum foil a lot more than I ever used to. And buy paper plastic little sandwich bags instead of Ziploc bags. You can buy these recycled plastic paper sandwich bags. They come in a box. And every time I need to wrap up half of a lemon I haven't used, or something you need to stick in the refrigerator, or I also put my meat in it that I'm going to throw out in the garbage and put it in the freezer and then throw it all out one day, so it doesn't stink up my garbage. So just use those little paper bags instead of plastic. So those are just a few. Line your garbage cans with newspapers instead of plastic, just, and make your own if you can. Make your own.
We started using plastic wrap in the house and then rinsing it off and sticking it in the Ridwell, the thin plastic things.
Yeah.
And the a related thing is and we still have some, I'm sure there's some place you can get it, although it's fairly expensive, is there's a cloth that is coated, I think, in beeswax that you can buy and to wrap things in. And we have several of them. They're beginning to wear out.
Yeah.
But, you just rinse them off and they're fine for cheese and things like that.
You can actually make them too.
Can you?
If you have the beeswax, I'd be curious how.
Get beeswax, and actually there have been classes through the Ecology Center where you grate the beeswax onto it and then you iron it, using another cloth. And then the problem is they don't last as long as the other ones, but the other ones are expensive. $12 for.
They are.
Yeah,
they are expensive.
Yeah.
Well, great. And then Emma, you may have some other issues. I don't know if you have any updates on Third Act or on some of the other climate issues that we've been looking at, or.
Let's see, there's a couple things that we're just kind of continuing to track. So I'll mention them because nothing ever gets resolved forever, right? So Third Act is working very hard on the SB 252. That's the bill most of you have heard about, where to get the two biggest pensions in the country to divest from fossil fuel, and that's CalPERS and CalSTRS. And I'm curious, I know Margot got off already, but is anybody on this call either a pensioner with CalPERS or CalSTRS? And if you don't know who they are, then you probably are not. Still relevant because taxpayers put money into the pension funds. Anyway, that's a big effort in its third year to get require those pension funds to divest from new fossil fuel projects within a 5-year period. It's actually a very reasonable bill, but it's being fought like crazy by the pension plans because they claim that people are going to lose money, which isn't true. We're actually losing money in fossil fuels. So those of us like me who are in those pension plans want them out. And so if anybody can weigh in on that, and it's before the House Committee for Retirement. And we really think it's going to pass this year, but there are options for people who want to get involved. There are hearings you can sit in on with the pension funds. There's going to be a big lobby day in August, and there's going to be training for that. And I'm actually going to go because I've never done a lobby day, and I'm kind of intrigued now that I'm retired and I can't say I have to work. I'd actually like to meet some of these, I was going to say crooks, but they're not crooks. They're hardworking, committed local elected officials. And then the other big thing that Third Act is working on is trying to target Citibank, which is the second biggest investor in the world in fossil fuel. So trying to get them to stop investing because we'll stop then building these fossil fuel sites. And one of the ways is to try to get Costco, which has Citibank administers their credit card, trying to get Costco to convince Citibank they need to stop because the Costco shoppers like me don't want to see them working with Citibank. And So there's a petition which we can let people know about we've already submitted 40,000 signatures to the brand new Costco CEO. Welcome to the business. And we're trying to double that number and go back because he apparently actually noticed the petition and took it to his board of directors and mentioned it. So we felt like at least they're aware, people care about this issue. And then there's also a way, if you're a Costco member, that you can online give feedback. And so we've all been giving feedback that we love Costco. We want them to do the right thing. That's their motto, do the right thing. And we want them to disengage from Citibank. And I'll just mention that the other thing that's happening with that is there's a real push from communities of color that are frontline communities that are located near all of these fossil fuel sites in the Gulf Coast and the southern part of the country. There's been fights for years, and they are really coming to the table to say Citibank is racist and that this environmental racism needs to stop, and we need to stop putting our money into places where that's how it's going to be used. So if anybody is interested in pretty easy ways to make your opinion known, I don't know, is anybody else here a Costco member? I love Costco. They're apparently a little bit approachable because they actually care about the community they serve. So you can ask me and we'll put things in focus on for. The other thing we're doing is working with Public Utility Commission and trying to get them to stop strangling to death the solar industry and to really start passing policies that will promote green energy. And the California Public Utilities Commission hasn't been very good about that. They've really been siding on with the gas folks and not the people whose lives are being affected. So those are just some of the areas. It's kind of a quick. And if you're interested in any of it, I can let you know more, and there's lots of opportunities to get more informed. So that's that. So we're done with that, right?
Yes, I think
Judy,
so I was just going to give a little preview of our next month's meeting.
Right, I was going to turn it over to you. Go ahead.
Okay. And here I am. Well, I'm afraid we're going to run out of time. So as
Oh,
you
no,
know,
no.
we meet the third Tuesday of the month. And so in May, we will be meeting on the 21st. And we're going to be talking about a number of end of life issues. I think you probably saw that the lawsuit that we talked about in January that was brought to basically defeat the existing end of life law was thrown out. And so Peter Sussman, who is an Ashby Village member and was a plaintiff, not a plaintiff, but a party to that lawsuit, he will give us an update and talk about whether there's still some danger for challenges to the existing law. And then Marcia Hoffer is going, who is the founder of A Better Exit, is going to talk about their efforts to expand the existing law to address situations involving dementia. And we have invited Compassion and Choices to talk about their position on that effort to expand the law. And they sent us a statement, which we will be sharing about what their position is. They are not, and A Better Exit has gotten a sponsor for a bill and says it will be a while before that law actually passes, but this is the beginning of that process. So that should be a very dynamic discussion. I know when we did our survey to see what issues people, Elder Action members were interested in, end of life and nursing home reform and that whole long-term services and support were high priorities for people. So Roberta, do you want to add anything to that promotion for next month's meeting?
No, but if I have more information before then, I will let you know. I'm going to a meeting of the Association for Nursing Home Reform this week, so I'll let you know if anything new has come up.
And we will remind you of next month's meeting. And we do, for those of you who are not that familiar with us, we do send out every month on the first Tuesday of the month, something called Focus on 4. And it will give you, some of what we heard today about actions you can take will be reflected in that. And there's usually a promotion for the next month's meeting. So look for that. That will be coming to you. And I think that's it for
Lynn.
yeah.
Lynn has her hand up.
So, yeah,
It
go
might
ahead.
be relevant to this.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Lynn.
Am I correct that there's also a Death Cafe meeting at the Ashby Village on that same day at 2:30? Is that correct?
Is that the same day?
21st? I don't know.
I wrote it down.
Yeah, I know there is a Death Cafe meeting. I don't know if that is the same day. It's too bad, but we always meet on the third Thursday. So it's unfortunate that they scheduled it. If that's true, I don't know. We'll check that, but there's not much we can do about that. So too bad. And particularly because the topic is
Right.
Oh,
Maybe
Too bad.
they could be invited to this meeting.
yeah, well, we'll have to check on that. Okay, so Amy Gorman couldn't be here today, but she did want to make an announcement about the upcoming May 2nd live postcarding event. Voting was another priority that the survey identified. We will be meeting live at the Ashby Village office from 2 to 4 to write postcards. She's working with 2 different groups. Remember, this is a 501c3 organization, so we don't do partisan campaigning, but we are working to get out the vote. So these are 2 organizations that she has targeted to work for us to work with. And she does a fantastic job of organizing it. So again, her email is also in today's agenda. And you can tell her you're coming, or just, show up, bring a friend, bring a pen. We usually have snacks of some sort, and it's fun. Get to meet like-minded people and, do something useful. So, okay, Roberta, do you want to say something about the PG&E
Yep.
faction? Yeah.
Yep, I just want to keep it in the forefront of your minds. So last year, AB 205 was passed, which allowed PG&E to raise their rates so that they're some of the highest utility tax, or not the highest utility tax in the country. And that was done without any public hearings, and it's uncapped and unlimited, which means it has the potential to even increase more than it is now. So as a result, a new bill to repeal that bill that was passed without any public discussion, AB 1999, has been introduced. And it's really important to call your legislator, in the assembly, and let them know that you fully support that bill and are upset about AB 205 being passed.
The fact sheet was attached to today's agenda.
Yeah.
So.
And that's very, very informative. So you can take a look at that and get all the details.
okay. Is there any other news announcements before we close and go to the free-for-all chat? Judy, you're on mute.
I'm I'm going to have to not participate in the free for all because my grandson called me and needs a ride. So I'm going to bow out now. So thanks everybody, and see you all the next time.
Okay.
I also need, I also need to go. So thank you.
Let me just say before people start going that for people who are new particularly, one of the things you probably saw was that the issues we work on are often identified by somebody in our group. So if you have an issue you're passionate about that you think would matter to Ashby Village members, if you bring it to this group and there are like-minded people who want to work on it, that's how we always get things started. And we did that with the electric vehicles. We've done that with plastics, many things. So we're a group that's very open to new ideas. And I heard a couple of new ones today, and I just urge us to bring them up and see if anybody wants to join you in thinking them through. So otherwise, thank you all. And if you want to stay and chit chat, you're welcome to do so. We'll leave the room open and see if anybody has questions, comments, ideas you didn't have a chance to share during the meeting. And otherwise, see you in a month.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I want to say hi to everyone again. It's been a while since I've been at a meeting, and I hate doing this, kind of popping in and out, but it's the only way I can manage it. Fortunately, my commitments have eased, and I feel a little bit more free to go to meetings. But one thing that's always on my mind, and I'll throw it out, and I just keep throwing it out. Someday somebody will respond. I'm really interested in intergenerational activities, and because I really feel that, especially like this election, for example, I know we can't, as a group, this can't, advocate for particular candidate, but still, the things that we're deciding, that are being decided, are going to really affect our children, their children, their children. I mean, it's really about the future. And that concerns me a lot, because I have three stepkids and one of my own, and they are really feeling frustrated, and they don't want to vote, and they don't want to be involved because they feel like they really can't do anything, have an effect. And I really feel like we've lost an opportunity to use the elder wisdom concept, and pass on some of the things that we have learned, and some of the reasons we are motivated to do things. Because I know my son, for example, he just rolls his eyes and, gets really upset, and doesn't understand how we can have any hope. And, my friends and I apologized to him for not fixing it all. But we did our best, and we're still trying to do our best. But anybody who wants to talk about stuff like that, or wants to try to set up some kind of intergenerational communication, some kind of, possibly, I think maybe it'd be nice to just have some kind of regular, but not too often, meeting or activities where we can involve people of, different generations. And it could be, people in their 30s, it could be even people in their 20s. It doesn't, it could be a whole range of people in different ages. And I think there's a great need for motivating people, especially in the younger age groups, because they're the ones that are dropping out right now. They're frustrated with, well, again, I don't want to get too much involved in campaigns, but they're frustrated by some of the decisions that have been made, and they feel, well, there's just lessers of two evils, and they're tired of that, and there's got to be better ways of doing things. And I think that even just sharing our reasons for hope, and the reasons that we are motivated to take the actions we do, is something that it motivated me when I was in my 20s, and so I just thought I'd share that. I don't know if anybody else feels that way or whatever, but I just wanted to share that. So,
Rochelle, I'm wondering if you want to talk a little bit in response to Paula about what we did last year with the intergenerational effort with the book group. And, to say that sadly, when we did the survey this year, the intergenerational effort finished near the bottom, which was sort of surprising because it had been near the top before that. So
yeah, it's too bad. Yeah.
Rochelle, you're muted.
So do you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So last year what we did, Paula, is we gathered a group called the Women's Environmental Network. And I'm actually meeting with a person this evening, as it turns out, who was the head of that organization. It's about 2,000 young women within the Bay Area. And they and we all met together to look at a book that we looked at together intergenerationally. And it was a very popular gathering. It was a chance for breakout groups that involved younger women, older women, and it turned out that all the wisdom didn't come from the older people, and all of the enthusiasm didn't come from the younger people.
Exactly. Yeah.
It
That's
was
great.
a very,
You got a good turnout? You had a pretty good
we did,
participation?
I don't know, Julie, if you remember quite how many people came, but it was a very large.
30 at least.
Oh, great. Wow. Well, I would encourage us to do more of those, but yeah, thank you.
So I'll be talking about that somewhat with Rebecca Liebschitz, who's the woman who was on the board of that organization. I'll be talking with her some about that this evening.
Great.
Yep, I just wanted to add that Jessica Sterling, one of our staff members in charge of volunteer services, has been interested in that, and she's done some outreach to some young people who are actually engaged with her now around doing technology, assisting our members with tech. And
Great.
some of us here at Ashby Village have been involved with a program called Sages and Seekers.
Oh, great.
Sages, which pairs individuals with either high school students or young college students early in their college career. And that was a fun thing that Julie and I both did. I think it's an 8-week commitment, and you're paired with an individual.
Wow.
Other organization I would recommend to you is called CoGenerate. And that's an organization that's dedicated to getting the generations together. And they have interesting forums. They just had a really interesting sort of town hall with young people discussing things. So it's another way to get involved. It's not an actual Ashby Village program.
Right, right. Well, it's great because I'm involved a lot in nonviolence and anti-war stuff. And we had a book group that was encouraged to be intergenerational. And there were 4 young people, but I couldn't get my grandkids to join. But I think that's great. And the more efforts we put, I love all those references. Thank you, Roberta. That's great. I'm going to look into them.
Got one more. I don't know if you
good.
participated at all in the OLLI program at
right.
Yeah. So Daryl Zook is one of the instructors, very interested in that. And he has periodic meetings with some of his undergraduate students and the OLLI seniors. And they have very interesting discussions.
Oh, wonderful. Wow, all those things that are out there that I didn't even know about. How great. Thank you.
You know, it's interesting, Julie. I've often, I'm not sure people aren't interested in intergenerational things. It's just that I think there are other issues, right? I mean, there's so many issues and some are more acute. So they may have moved to the top, but I think there's still an interest in intergenerational activities. So maybe after the election, we'll get back to some of that.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing about intergenerational is it's not really just one issue. It's a breadth of community on all the issues. You know, I mean, most of the younger people I know are more concerned about the environmental issues than some of the other things. But yeah, so it's not a separate issue. Interestingly, it's really just sort of a way of you know, coalescing, you know, of working together. Yeah, but that's really great. I'm excited about that, to know that they.
Emma, do you know if Third Act is doing more intergenerational?
There's a few things. Third Act is working with the Civic Center, and they have a campaign called Senior to Senior, which I misunderstood for a long time. I thought it meant senior me and senior high school students, but in fact, it's a program that older people help organize in high schools to train high school seniors to work with other juniors and seniors to
Oh.
get them to register to vote, because you can register when you're 16.
Right.
You don't have to wait till you're 18. And statistically, if they register at 16, kids are more likely to
Yeah.
vote at 18. And so they're just really kicking it up again now. And they've been holding some trainings for people who want to be, because it's interesting to me. As a senior, what I have to offer is I might know the principal of the school.
Yeah, right.
And be able to get into
Yeah.
the school. And then the young people are there and they're interacting with the other young people, but it's the older people who get them the connection and bridge. So that's one program I know of. And then 1,000 Grandmothers, if you know about them, they do a lot of work supporting youth versus the apocalypse. And you know, so they're doing a lot right now with supporting different actions, not by going and getting arrested themselves, but providing the kind of support that an older person might be able to provide, short of getting arrested. So, so I'm intrigued by the senior to senior, and I was going to look into whether there were schools in the Bay Area. I'm in Berkeley, and Berkeley's apparently got it all wired for getting the seniors registered to vote, but I would bet you places like Richmond High and Oakland Tech and do not have those kind of programs. So it's kind of like what you're saying, Paula, but going even younger,
right?
To the young people who are maybe they haven't given up hope yet. They're still too, you know, thinking about their peers and their best friends. But those are the things that I'm aware of.
Well, I get newsletters from both of those, but you know, a lot of times if it doesn't stand out, I might miss those. So it's great to be, you know, apprised of that, because that helps.
Yeah. And if you were interested in the senior to senior, there's one person in third act who's just started working on it. And I think she's going to look into what are some of the East Bay high schools where, you know, we could help get the in to these programs, because we have to do it soon. Because once you get to where they're getting ready to graduate, you're talking to the juniors instead. So I'd be happy to connect you.
That'd be great. I used to be a high school teacher, but it's been a little bit of time. So I don't know the people that are in the schoolrooms right now, but I could easily
find out.
Connect with them. Thank you.
Good.
I'm glad that that these things are happening. And I mean, all of the activities that that this group works on are wonderful, and I do follow it as much as I can, because I think Ashby Village is a great program. You mentioned earlier the compassionate, what was it called, compassionate care, or when the group on end of life they did a really wonderful presentation. I don't know if you saw that one, but it was really good. After I was teacher, I was an attorney, and I did elder law, so that was another thing that I found was very very helpful. And just to pass on to people, you know, that if we're interested in the issue, I said, well, look for this group, because they were a really good group. So I'm looking forward to the next meeting. I'll make a point to get to that. I think the other issue about aging that I guess I missed, or maybe I didn't vote in the priorities list, but one thing that I found, and I'm urging other groups relating to elders to deal with, is depression and spirituality and spiritual issues, because I think those are things that I think we get lost. You know, we get lost in our loneliness sometimes. Not you, because we're all busy, right? But people who are, you know, over the active age of going to work every day, you know, sometimes those issues can be they underlie a lot of other problems. And so it's something that I think is always a worthwhile matter. But yeah, there's so much to do. There's still so much to do. So, well,
it's great to have your new energy, Paula, because you know, you remind us of a lot of things that we've been interested in for a long time. So that's really great.
Well, it feels good in a new group. I honestly, I burned out, you know, so I had a couple of burnouts, you know, and so it's good to feel energy for a change again. But
great.
Yeah. So
okay, it looks like people are dropping off, but I wondered, either Sue or Jan, if either of you want to chime in with anything or give you a little space before we get off, if you want to share anything in particular. Oops, Sue, you're on mute.
Can't figure it out.
Okay, that's fine.
Mhm.
No worries. Okay, well,
I think we're done.
I
Well, it was
think we
nice
are
meeting you
too.
again, as I said. Good to see you all, and I'll see you next time. Okay,
Great, thanks.
Julie, what was the date of that postcard meeting? Do you have it in front of you?
May 2nd.
Okay, thanks.
It's also in the agenda that went out today.
Yeah, I know. I just thought I could put it down while I had.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah,
All right.
hopefully be there and bring a friend or bring a young disciple.
Yeah.
This is
You just
Okay.
never know.
Bring your son.
Yeah.
good to see you all.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.